I used to be a runner, but before that, I hated it. I absolutely detested it. I only started running when I was about 40. For the previous 39 years, I was only interested in running if there was a ball involved. If it involved more than about 30 seconds of intense running, you can forget it, because actually, I just couldn't do it. When we used to do cross-country and physical education classes at school when I was a kid, some kids actually took the bus. There wasn't much country doing cross-country running in that part of London. I wasn't one of those kids, but I hated it all the same, and me and a couple of others inevitably were last back to the changing rooms. So yes, 3 years ago, I used to be a runner. I had run 8 marathons and 2 ultra marathons in the previous 6 years. I want to be a runner again, but I'm so out of shape now after being a dad for 9 years, and with 2 kids under 3 years old, I'm now 51. Can you believe that? And I've put on a good 12 kg or 25 pounds. Maybe more. I know how to do the training. I've used a ton of gadgets and wearable devices in the past to help me with my training, but this time I've decided to pull out the big gun. I've decided to get the Apple Watch, and I want this to be at the center point of my training to help me get running fit again. And I'm inviting you to join me to see how that works out. Okay, let's go back a bit and let me tell you about how I got into running and all the Garmins and Fitbits I've used so far, and why this time I'm relying on Apple to get me back into shape. So I spent most of my 20s getting a degree and then a PhD, and then I worked and traveled for a while, and then I went back to university to train as a clinical psychologist. And I've been doing a lot of that psychology work for over 30 years now, but I've always been interested in travel for work or pleasure. I've always tried to fit as much in as I could, and that's active sports too, when and where I could. But running? Why? No, I wasn't interested until I hit 40. I was terrified of being the guy who sits in the pub and doubles in size before they know it. Now, there's nothing wrong with sitting in the pub, I actually miss that. But I do have hereditary health risks that I need to pay attention to. So running seemed like the best fit for my lifestyle back in London at that time. So I did the Couch to 5K program, and though it was painful and really hard at times, I can say it was one of my best achievements ever. And the wisest thing I did was join a running club, the wonderful Serpentine Running Club in central London, based very close to Hyde Park, Regent's Park and Kensington Gardens. And once I figured out I could run for 40 minutes, there was no turning back. I started setting myself bigger goals, a 5K race, then a 10K, then so many half marathons that I can't actually count them. I was definitely a middle of the pack runner. I wasn't anything special, but I enjoyed it, and I was getting much fitter than I'd ever been in my life. Now, what helped me was being pretty scientific about my training, running on treadmills, tempo runs, sprint interval training outdoors and on treadmills, understanding that the physiological challenges of a marathon are totally different to running a half marathon, and then training accordingly, including getting used to running while eating.
Forbidden donut.
And then I stepped up further to ultra marathons, including incurring a concussion, which it took me months to recover from. Now, I smashed my head at 8 kilometers into a 60-kilometer ultra marathon, but that's another story. But I did learn that I'm a stubborn person who won't give up on a goal I've set myself, particularly if I've sacrificed months of training to get there. So in my scientific approach, what devices was I using to help me track my running? Let's go through these one by one. So when I first started, I really didn't know what I was doing. So I bought a Fitbit Ultra from eBay. I was based back over in London at this time for a couple of years. It was small, light, and was a clip-on tracker rather than one you wore on your wrist. And it tracked basic things like steps and sleep pretty well. It was also one of the first that could track altitude too, and so it could track stairs climbed. Sure, it wasn't the most advanced, but it wasn't bad, and it was a good start for me. But shortly after I bought it though, it fell apart. Now, I wrote to Fitbit and they were actually good enough to replace it with a Fitbit One, which was the replacement device for the now discontinued Ultra. I actually still have it, though its battery life is now down to less than 1 day. It used to be about 2 weeks. Now it's another little clip-on tracker, but it needs to be in a little case, otherwise you can just slip it in your pocket. And this was really popular. For a while my wife had one, my father-in-law had one, lots of people I knew had one. And I actually used this for years. It's the one I've used most, I think, in all of my running and tracking my fitness. But by now I needed to get a bit more serious about my training. Enter the Garmin Forerunner 610, which I again bought secondhand off eBay, but also kitted myself out with a new heart rate monitor and foot pod. By this time I was learning about heart zone focused training, and also became more aware of how important cadence was, your foot rotation rate, and how important that was for running efficiency as well as injury prevention. So the number of variables I was tracking increased tremendously, and I started taking my training very seriously indeed as I started getting up towards half marathons and eventually marathons and ultra marathons in my running. One of the great things about this combo was getting both GPS and heart rate data, but the 610 was starting to fail a bit on my longer runs with battery issues, so it became time to upgrade again. Now I quite like the Garmin Connect system. I mean, check out some of these maps I still have of my runs back in 2010, 2011. One long run here in London and then another in Tonga in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I loved the Garmin for this capability. But around this time my Fitbit 1 was also starting to give up and my running was starting to get a bit less intense too. So I decided I wanted more of a multi-activity tracker, but also be able to cover my runs in detail too. So the FootPod got relegated to the back of the cupboard. I actually have no idea where that is now. And I got Garmin's first fitness smartwatch, the Vivo Active. You know, it was just kind of okay. To be honest, the touchscreen was a bit flaky, better than the 610, which was incredibly laggy, but the Vivo Active just didn't deliver on its promises. The notifications were pretty basic for smartphone connection, and I was also getting tired of being tied to a heart rate strap on my runs, even though it covered GPS well. So I decided it was time to switch back to the Fitbit system, which had just put out the Fitbit Charge 2. Now this had built-in heart rate tracking, but no GPS. But my runs were getting a lot shorter now with kids in my life, but the heart rate was really good to track on shorter, more intense interval running. So I decided this was the way to go. And it served me well for a couple of years, probably a bit longer actually. Nice screen, although basic in functionality, and a comfortable strap. No need to tell the watch what you are actually going to be doing. It seemed to pick this up pretty accurately. It wasn't waterproof though, so aqua jogging was a no-no, which actually became a bit of a nuisance as I was doing that more and more. Anyway, fast forwards, I'm now 50 years old, 3 young kids in my life, super busy with that and other things going on too. No time for training and starting to get a bit more out of shape than I was comfortable with. And then I got sick, and then the rest of the year flew by, and then COVID-19, and the pounds piled on, and my strength is starting to ebb away, and now I'm 51. And that brings us here. I'm motivated to try and get back on track to a pathway to fitness and running again. And I've got 2 smartwatches here to get myself back on track, right? Wrong. So yeah, you leave these around too long and they start falling apart. And yeah, sure, I could get new straps, but I thought, hey, let's do this right. Let's update my 2-year-old device and get something that suits where I am right now. Enter the Apple Watch Series 5. I did think about a cheaper device, maybe another Fitbit, but then I thought, no, value yourself. Do this. Help yourself, help others. Now, I really regret not documenting my fitness journey before. This time, I'm going to share it with you and pick something that's easy and good and fits in with my life and possibly your life too. So here it is. The Apple Watch has arrived. No more excuses. You can watch my first stats check-in as I go through my baseline measures, and you can join me on my first run with my Apple Watch too. I can pretty much guarantee it's not going to be pretty, and just wait till I start the strength workouts too. I just can't wait. Tune in next week so I can tell you how I plan to use it. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video, check out some of my other videos too. Here might be a really good place to start. Thanks for watching. My name's Saab Johal. I will run again. Thank you. See you. Good night.
It's the money. It's the money.